We've seen a lot of brands that have made their name off of certain flagship product and remained unchanged for decades, like, well, hopefully unchanged, like Doc Marten, Birkenstock. But we've also seen how those brands will take that goodwill that they created over decades with that flagship model to sell pretty terrible products to people that assume that they're built to the same quality of that flagship product. And Clark's is the same way, because this Wallabee that we cut apart is one of their flagship products. It's built in that traditional way, a lot of good materials with the CF Stead leather, the crepe rubber sole, the traditional stitching, and the mock toe. So for Mocktober, I wanted to cut apart one of the Clark's products inspired by the OG and really figure out if this is built to the same quality as the standard Wallabees. Is it all just style, or is there actually some substance in here? Is this a true moccasin construction like we know from the originals? And is this a sign of Clark's selling out, or is this a new chapter for Clark's? Because their history goes back way further than you might think. It's all the way back in the 1800s, because in 1825, Cyrus and James Clark in Somerset, England started making slippers. And there's a whole other version of the history from 1825 to 1949 that we can cover in a different video, but 1949, Clark's makes one of their maybe even more iconic shoes, the Desert Boot, and some would argue that they stole it from South Africa. For more information on that, go watch the Jim Green video I'll put below and the other Clark's video. And then in 1967, the Wallabee was first introduced, and then through the 70s, the Wallabee became an immensely popular shoe, especially for Jamaicans. And then over the next few decades, the 80s and the 90s, the Jamaican immigrants in New York City started making the Wallabees really popular in the hip hop scene, worn by Slick Rick, Ghostface Killah, and a bunch of other people in that scene. But at the same time, in the 2000s, they gained a lot of popularity through just people wearing these because of the comfort and the value you get, and especially in the 2010s with these being on the feet of one Walter White. And that's kind of how this shoe was to me. It's like, I didn't really see it for the hip hop side of things. I saw it in the 2000s when the geometry teachers are wearing it, the dads are wearing it, including the recent resurgence in popularity that has led us to want to cut these in half, because they're popular once again because of like 3 or 4 different types and groups of people through TikTok and different ages have started to re-adopt this style of shoe again. And so it is kind of a timeless, ageless mock toe shoe kind of style. So what are these shoes? Well, the brand is Clark's. The style is the Torhill Hi. They weigh 1 pound, 1.6 ounces. They retail for $130, whereas the normal Wallabees are about $150 to $170, depending on which variation you got. And these are made in Cambodia. And the way that Clark's positions this product is the bold ribbed outsole that defines ankle boot. Torhill Hi is born from our archives, but feels every bit as contemporary today as it did as part of our 90s big gripper profile, showcasing a streamlined lace-up design that models its curves and contours on our iconic Wallabee. It combines premium materials with thoughtful details like intricate top stitching to create the ultimate heritage-inspired casual shoe. Heritage-inspired, that's the thing that this whole thing for me is it heritage? Is it heritage-inspired, or is it just using that heritage to sell a bad product when people are assuming it is the heritage thing? If you want a pair of these, check them out via the links in my description. A lot of people have no idea that Rose Anvil started as a leather goods company, and especially a camera gear company, because in 2018, we launched our very first, well, a second Kickstarter, raised $500,000 for a camera harness. COVID hit immediately after, and so we started cutting boots and shoes in half from a professional leather worker's perspective. And then that whole thing happened, now we're nearly at 1 million subscribers. But I finally got around to designing all the rest of the camera gear that I've been wanting to release for like the last 5 years, starting with the little slim wrist strap, cinches down, hand sewn. It's our belt thickness leather, so it's super sturdy. Our slim neck strap, same kind of concept. Really simple attachments, solid brass, hand sewn details, a little neck piece there. The lasso link, which is one of my favorites because this thing is super articulate. You see all these little individual pieces and how they flow and move around. Our Lone Bandit that you probably heard me talking about plenty. It holds one camera at about as comfortably as humanly possible because it distributes your weight over a larger surface area. And then the Big Daddy, the full Bandit harness. This carries 2 to 3 cameras, because you can get a 3rd camera attachment with the Pro package, and everything is designed by me and handmade right here in the shop. So if you need to get some Christmas gifts, some birthday gifts, if you need to upgrade your camera gear, or if you got an old camera just sitting around, you need a good excuse to pull it out, get yourself a little strap, check them out below, and thanks for supporting our handmade leather goods that makes this whole channel possible. So now let's start going through the details, starting with the leather, because if you remember from this video, they use CF Stead leather in these. And CF Stead is one of the only companies I'm like, okay, I'll buy some suede if it's from CF Stead, because they make super high quality suede. They're an English-based tannery. They're arguably the best and most popular suede tannery in the entire world. And so it makes sense that Clark's, an English-based company, uses an English-based tannery. And then especially when it comes to actually needing a structural unlined leather and it being suede, CF Stead is almost the only way to go, because suede is that lower cross section where you don't have that smooth grain that holds all those loose fibers together. And so the fact that this was like 2.5 millimeters thick, had a really tight grain, had a really tight structure, and didn't have a lot of stretch, and really acted as if it was not a suede. I was expecting that in this shoe, but unfortunately it is not CF Stead. This is just a regular suede that has a lot more stretch. It's a lot cheaper, and you can just feel and see the difference. That's why like all this is so interesting and why we do all this, because not all suedes are created equally. These are both suede, but this is just a terrible suede. It's super thin. It's only 1.5 millimeters thick. It's super stretchy, and it doesn't really hold its form, and that's why they've had to structure it with a lining behind it. With that lining, it still only took 20 pounds to puncture through the bottom 10 of all of the test results we've done with the puncture test. So it's definitely not up to that heritage quality, that heritage inspired. It's just a cheap suede. And then speaking of that lining, unlike the true Wallabees that are completely unlined, except for right here in the heel where you've got that leather heel counter cover, these are completely lined all the way through. And just to, you know, it's a typical sneaker, like jersey type material. You got a little bit of fake leather right here around the top here. I'm not a big fan of, but it's excusable. It's like a pretty innocuous spot to have it. And one thing I really like is that it does also have an internal heel counter cover that looks like suede until you put a lighter to it, and then it melts and burns, and so it's just a fake suede. But at least it has that internal heel counter, because that's where everyone wears their shoes out the fastest, and I'll take a fake leather heel counter over a non-heel counter any day. So I'm really curious when we get it cut in half, if it's actually a double layer or is it just a single layer. But then if we look deeper inside, pull this insole out, it is a leather topped insole, and it's just an open cell foam. It's a fairly cheap, heavily coated leather, so it's not going to give you that breathability you get from a natural leather like that veg tan you see in a higher and more expensive products, or even just the natural way that this upper wraps underneath like a true moccasin construction where you're actually standing on the leather. It's a higher quality suede. It's nowhere near as, or this is nowhere near as good as this. It's just a cheaper, really loose fiber structure, heavily coated suede that's not going to give you a lot of the benefits of leather, and it's just a cheap open cell foam underneath. But nothing really to complain about. It's fine. It's just a typical insole. But underneath is where it gets interesting, because now we can see for sure that it's not built in a true moccasin style construction, where instead of lasting a shoe from the top and around, moccasins are the opposite. It starts at the bottom, wraps up, and that's why you have this moccasin stitch on top where that bottom leather comes up and needs to meet and join with the other part of the boot. That's where the original mock toe stitch came from. All the way back, the early Native Americans making moccasins on the plains. It's a whole other thing. If you haven't seen the Russell Moccasin videos, go watch that. It's a really cool story of how like European boot making combined with a Native American moccasin making made one of the truest American boots of all time. It's a sick video and it's criminally underviewed, so go watch that. But underneath of that, what I was getting at is you can see it's just a Strobel stitch, And so, it's not, I was hoping for something more, but it's just built like a sneaker so far. The bar drop test performed okay, and so it's really leading me to think this is mostly just built like a sneaker. And the cup sole and the way this is structured really informs that, and I was hoping for some of the elements of heritage rolled into it, so I'm hoping we get it cut in half. There's something on the inside, but even this outsole is pretty different from the Clarks, and obviously that's the point, right? It's a cup sole, it's a modernized version, and I like how big and chunky and heavy this is. I like that it's sidewall stitched. It's a higher quality shoe way of doing things because it's not just glued on. If you wanted to resole it, you technically could, because you could pop that stitch, but good luck finding this exact cup sole or one that even fits on this once you wear the sole out. And that's why people really like these more traditionally made shoes, because as soon as you wear this out, all you have to do is take it to a cobbler. He's gonna pull off this crepe rubber outsole and glue a new one on. That's all it takes. Whereas with this, you're gonna have to rebuild it because it's Strobel stitch. It's just gonna be a huge pain, and it's not gonna be worth the money. Whereas these are gonna be worth the money to change or to resole. And that's another advantage that the originals have over the new ones, is that crepe rubber, because crepe rubber is really, really cool. It's kind of underrated in my opinion, because this boot technically has a crepe rubber slip sole, a crepe rubber midsole. It has some foam to kind of take up some of that weight and give you a little bit extra squish, and then that crepe rubber outsole. But people love crepe rubber because it is super squishy and really, really comfortable. It's about as natural of a rubber as you can get. It's literally just like almost uncured rubber. It's so natural. It's surprisingly grippy because of, you assume it's because it's so flat, it's not grippy, but it grabs onto grit, and so it makes that a little bit more grippy. It's a really soft rubber at 40 Shore A, so it just naturally grips more. It's almost like an eraser, and it's just generally super comfortable, resolable, and it has that crepe rubber look to it. Whereas with these, completely opposite. So it's just basically a sneaker. So let's cut these apart, figure out what's on the inside. Is there any other redeeming qualities that make it look and act more like the originals, or is this really just a sneaker in the shape of a Wallabee? All right, we got them cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing it, because I like getting into more of these niche things and like retelling certain stories, informing some of these iconic shoes through the alternatives that really give it the context it needs. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, check out our handmade leather goods, our collaborations. It's the only way we can afford to buy these boots and shoes just to destroy. So let's see what's inside. So basically just a sneaker on the inside. It's just big chunks of foam, you know, it's not injection molded. You got some relief cuts and, you know, it's not necessarily bad, but I wouldn't really plan on these lasting very long just because this rubber's so cheap. It's like a cheaper sneaker construction in a $130 like Clark's Wallabee wannabe. Maybe that's the title, it's like Clark's Wallabee wannabe, because it really is, that is what it is. But that also might be the point, and that's might be why they made the shoe, because this is gonna be a lot more squishier, it's gonna be more flexible, less geometry teacher looking, it's gonna be more affordable by 20 or 30 bucks, and it's just gonna be an easier, faster, and a more shoe style shoe compared to more of these like heritage, heavier, traditional shoes. But is it made to the same standard of quality that built the Clark's name with the Wallabees? No, it's literally just a sneaker that looks like the Wallabees. Is it just style, or is there actually some substance to it? Mostly style. Everything that had some substance and quality that was in the Wallabees is completely removed in these. Is it a true moccasin construction? Nope, fake moccasin construction. Is this a sign of Clark selling out, or is this a new chapter for Clark's? I think it's maybe a little bit of both. You know, it's pretty obvious this is more of a sneaker, and it looks more like a sneaker, but I think a lot of people would have assumed it's built to the Clark's quality. And so in that way, it kind of is. But for me, would I recommend it? Would I buy it? Which one would I do? I'd rather just have the real deals, you know, because it has everything that made these popular is still in this. So I would always just get the original. And it's only 20 or 30 bucks more, and it's the real Wallabee. It's not a wannabe Wallabee, and it's got the true mock stitch, it's CF stead, it's unlined. You know, maybe the best thing to do for me would be kind of combine the two. Keep that true moccasin, basically make this, but with a cup sole. That would be like what I was hoping this was. But at the end of the day, this is just a sneaker. It's a Wallabee wannabe. So let me know what you guys think. We got a lot of other cool mock toes this year. We're really going hard in Mocktober this year, because we've got a lot of the other iconic mock toe shoes with the Ariat, the other geometry teacher version of this shoe. We got some Hey Dudes, we got the Sperry's, and the king of all mock toes, the true moccasin king. We got a Russell moccasin video coming out. So let me know what you guys think and your opinion of these and what else you want us to cut apart from Mocktober. And thanks for watching these and subscribing and do all the things that support us and allow us to buy brand new stuff just to cut in half. And it's the only way we can do it is with your support. So thank you guys. See ya.